All right, so we're going to cut into the board and get this lovely twin action. Okay, they're ready to draw.
So Reinke to start and Reinke to respond.
I was just going to
How would
say,
like to
Reinke to start. Who? In the chat, I see Charles went to one tournament without Thomas. It's like, apparently that's a thing. We'll have to ask for some insight from the future. What on earth were they thinking? How dare they not twin just once in their lives?
And Thomas starting with, well, yes, something like Whammo, which he spots pretty quickly. Whammoed, don't think that's a word.
That would be quite creative.
Yeah. I guess if you want to play a bit longer, there's also Hawmed, Hawmed, but I don't think I think the ED is valuable in this case. Whammo is fine.
Yeah, I'm perfectly happy with Whammo here. And something that, Scrabble's just fun this way. Whammo in this particular form does not take an S hook, but Whammo with the two M's does.
Mm-hmm.
Fun little things we memorize. Sometimes, as is in my case, you learn the hard way. So this one does not take the S.
And now, yeah, well, Charles has the blank, but you know, surprisingly, his only bingo is, well, his only two bingos are through the vowel, one of the vowels available to him. Um, that's not always obvious. And like if I were in his shoes, I would probably be thinking quite deeply about the M and the H, but there's nothing. There's just bingos through the O.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive to look through yet another vowel when you already have 5 vowels to 1 consonant on your rack. But in this case, that is the thing to do. There are 2 options. They're both essentially the same word. They are both French. So aboiseau or aboiteau, depending on which one you choose, are the 2 options through the O.
Yeah, I was gonna leave you to do the pronunciation, so yeah, I just mentioned that there's a bingo, and
That's
so
fine.
he has missed them. Oh, he's okay. So exactly, I mean, this is the problem, right? I mean, when you have that kind of, like, when you have 4 vowels on your rack and you see a fifth vowel, you would probably be thinking that there's nothing there. But yeah, I'm sure he knows both of the words, just didn't look closely enough.
Yeah, that's a blank vision thing as well, and for the reasons we discussed, it's just not the most intuitive to combine yet another vowel and then have the exact right letter for the blank. It's certainly easy for us watching, definitely much harder to do in the moment. Meanwhile, Thomas playing basically really realistically his only doable option involving the Q, and back we go to Charles, who has drawn nicely after that last play.
Yeah. Will we see Wamos? Do you think?
Well, hopefully not, because he'll likely find out, like I do, that I did at one point, that it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Uh,
Interesting
ooh.
option just now for Thomas was actually playing Wens, Wens, keeping the Q. Um, yeah, sometimes when you have the Q and you have a bunch of other tiles that don't go well with the Q, you play them first, and then yeah, I think the good thing about Wens is that you have a potential of drawing something like an A for Kadi, which would play to the eye of Fuya. So that's something worth considering. Of course, if you pick a U, even better. Sometimes I mean, you have QUA and other options that you can choose. So Wenz might be a better play in that position. And Charles has spotted his highest scoring bingo of Betaine, blank being a T. And basically, all of his options, Betaine, Beanies, Beania, they all involve like opening up vowel to the double letter score, the one that leads to the triple word score. So everything is gonna give back some points, most likely. But this scores 6 points more than the other options available. So I think he's just biting the bullet and playing the bingo.
And then, as you've mentioned, just the ability to score back using the double letter score, triple word score combo, likely being a factor. That would make you briefly consider not playing, but he's ultimately played it, and Thomas should be using it here pretty shortly, I believe, with something like wide or wade, given that there are no playable bonuses with what he has.
Yeah, he does have Sinead, which is a double double, but Wide and Wade actually score more. So it's definitely a stronger choice. Yeah, interesting choice. I mean, I personally I might have considered Wade because I like giving myself the I when I keep ED, like DES. But I think it's very close between the two of them. So yeah. And Charles with the Z, something like zones and Fuyas is gonna be big score for him. I think he's also thinking, does he want to play something a little bit more defensive? Because zones is gonna open the Z to the triple word score. Something like SOZ also possible. Yeah, but I think at this juncture, there is no need to play too defensive. There are still other spots for scoring. Um, I would personally do zones. What would you do, Jesse?
I am very much proponent of taking points in this situation. Zones is just so many points to turn down, where the only way you would turn it down is if there's just something that scores even comparably well that isn't as volatile. Because yes, I mean, zones is technically volatile in the sense that your opponent can get a pretty decent score back more often than not. But at this level, they are expecting each other to score in the mid to high 30s each turn on average, and after zones, when you're playing with a Z and something else, it's maybe low to mid 40s if you have clunky tiles a lot of the time. And yes, it could be more in a worst case scenario, but I think you just have to assume your opponent's going to score anyway. So you might as well just score something that is higher than the average expected for you. In this case with zones, that's going to be 50 plus points, so that's certainly well above the average, and your opponent is, only in a handful of cases, I think, going to score comparably, but you can see why something like saws would come down instead if you are concerned about the high um, scoring response. As it turns out, it wouldn't have been a thing, as we will see soon, just given that there are multiple bingo options for Thomas that didn't involve the Z.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, I think it's interesting because the SOZ also blocks or kind of restricts the triple letter score on top of retain, which could be used to devastating effect if Thomas had the right tiles. So and he does retain the S for 4 years again, the next turn if he doesn't use it now. So there is some benefit to playing something a little bit more restrictive. And if you look at it on simulation, they're actually pretty close. And I think I actually don't have a clear winner between the two right now. So I think it's really close, even though the difference is, you know, 18 points. Um, that's what happens you know, when you play defense versus offense, and when you open up the set and the triple word lane. Yeah, I think the average response also of your opponent goes up so much. And Thomas seems to be considering relisted. Yeah, well, I guess maybe when I talked about weight and white just now, uh, I also did not remember that there was already an eye open. But I think this eye and the other eye, they are also, I mean, the eye of weight, if it had been played, would also be quite different in quality. So he's playing this for face value right now.
Relisted, leaving lots of opportunities for the board to further grow for both players. So yeah, perfectly nice. We're not going to see this one necessarily locked down anytime soon, just given plays like this. Nice to see.
Mm-hmm. And Charles, his good plays, I think his high scoring plays once again burn the S. He has Jutes, hooking onto players, but that once again gives a potential response um, from the J to the triple word score. And the other option being Duos, which is a little bit more defensive, I think. I mean, it's harder to play a word from the triple word score down to the J that way. What would you choose in that position? In this position, actually, Jesse, would you decide to score 8 more points with Jutes, or score 40 points with Duos? 48 for Jutes and 40 for Duos.
I wasn't immediately sold on either option, so like I can see the appeal for say Jutes or Jewers in the bottom left. It does give a little more opportunity for the opponent to score back afterwards. Jewers through the R and relisted technically allows for possibilities of things like, I don't know, say banjo is just one example. I think what I would do without exhausting it too much in the mind, I would probably go with Jewers personally in this case, just because I think it's quite viable. Zones and saws, I think there was just a bit more of a spread, if I recall, between the two plays as far as points. But I'd probably personally go Jewers, but Jutes is also perfectly good. I have nothing against it. I think I'd probably just go with Jewers instead. As it turns out, it will be a good thing for Charles to have that to play through, depending on what he pulls, just because Recooked is a massive score that should be coming down here pretty quickly.
Oh, but Jock is very tempting, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, that would be something to play for a lot of points and forego the bingo, certainly.
But Recooked is 102 points, so Jock is 51 points. I think it makes sense to play the bingo in this case. 51 points is quite a lot to give up. Tempo wise, I think. And yeah, Jock, even though it scores 51 and retains the blank, and it blocks the J spot that your opponent is also likely to use. I just think it's too many points to pass up.
Yeah, I think it's overcooked. Sorry, not overcooked, recooked for me here for sure. Um, Overcooking is something that I do because I'm not a great cook, but recooked, that's something I actually do, and happens to be the play here that I would go with, I think, although Jock is tempting, like you said.
Yeah, Charles, he hasn't quite set up anything on his rack yet, but he has stuff like Jinx. If he had an open T, he would have Pontifex. Mm, but let's see what he does in response. So Recooked takes a P in front as well. So Charles is sitting on a P right now. And we see Recooked being played for 102 points. Very well spotted by Thomas. But game's still within 80 points, 88 points. So Jinx is going to close up the gap quite a bit.
The nice thing with Jinx too is it keeps the P, like you said, for decent scores with Precooked. I think just double checking here with the challenge, because why not, given when it scores that much.
Yeah, just making sure. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure Charles knows Thomas style inside out, and his tendency of saying wrong words, or so he might, maybe he gave some tells that he wasn't that sure when he was thinking about whether to play Jock or Recook.
I was going to say the whole metagame of tells is already something that's quite considerable and complex for players in general, but when you have twins who just know each other at a very different level, you can only imagine what it's like to try and figure out tells. And um, yeah, that's got to be a fun. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to hear them discussing things like that. Yeah, the tell game must be insane for these guys. So Jinx coming down. Um, and oddly enough, both players have a P for pre-cooked as potential.
Hmm. So interesting. I mean, whether Thomas decides to play something like Grip, or if he doesn't see pre-cooked, then he does think something like Pingo as well, uh, which also a decent choice. Uh, Both of them keeping three consonants, but three rather synergistic consonants. But I mean, would you think that in this case, since Charles challenged recooked, that he might not see pre-cooked? Would you hope for that, or would you think that's the case?
I mean, it becomes a possibility when you think about points of consideration. Um, that's another element of the metagame here. Is was this really him just being unsure of the word? To a degree where they wouldn't know pre-cooked, or a frustration challenge where you're just checking to ensure. Like I think there's a few human factors to think about, but these are both quite exceptionally skilled players. So I think pre-cooked. I'm not sure that they'd miss it necessarily. I think it would be played, when spotted in this case. If I recall correctly, I forget when pre-cook was added, but I think it's been good in both books for some time now. And there you go. So grip comes down.
Yep. And Charles might have been hoping to play something like hoped in that same spot, but he does have a nice overlap on top of the K of Precooked, something like Horde, Pured. But that keeps two clunky letters in the F and H, so maybe not what he wants to play straight away. He's probably looking for better options. Um, he also has stuff like FEH below Y, which gets rid of both the F and H and keeps port for the next move, maybe. So yeah, it's quite a few choices that he has in this case. I think he's going to play port, which scores 36 points. Yep, it's a decent option.
And Thomas, in the meantime, gonna have a bit of a challenge here to unload what's on the rack. There is the ability to play Cub as one example on top of Port. That's just come down, so that's one possibility as far as a decently scoring option that's somewhat balances what's inequitable on his rack right now. Just looking for anything else that might stand out, but to me that's definitely one of the higher points of consideration would be Cub and Bach and Upo. What do you think, Weibin?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, he has to play cup. I don't think there's really anything else that's worth considering. ING is, it's just it's not. Well, I guess it's something that will help his rack a little bit. It's not always the most uh, fruitful thing to keep in your rack, but at least there's some synergy in it in ING. But yeah, the V and U is something that he has to break up right now. So playing Cup gets him 30 points, extends his lead further, and yeah, he has to hope for a good draw, which he might get. He ING quite a few bingos that might play not the best, but yeah. Mm, in the same position, he also has like Cup, GUB, but yeah, keeping the C and V not as good as the ING leave.
Looks like he's briefly pondering incubi, I'm assuming off of the I in wide.
Yeah, maybe he's thinking a bit of bot defense, like because that closes off the D and well both Ds. Okay, he's going for it, and you can't hook an S behind it. Yeah, but I think VG is just not as strong, and it's a big point sacrifice as well.
And this lends itself to something like Hefty alongside relisted as an option. I don't see anything involving CH going downward that would work. Otherwise, I'd say that Hefty actually alongside Incubi is an interesting point of consideration. It is somewhat volatile, but maybe not as volatile as one would think. On the bottom of the board, it has the Y in the second to last position on the bottom row, but not an obvious response for your opponent most of the time after that. But what other options might you consider right now, Weibin?
Yeah, there's actually a high scoring option of Flutie, right? Through the U of Jutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that scores 50 points. It opens up, which is also in line with Charles' intentions. Opens up the left triple word score and keeps the H. Well, the H is well, I guess the CH line is open, but it's not that. I guess there not that many options that can play in that place. He is looking at hefty though, which I think I mean it would be a decent play as well. Scores close to 40 points or maybe even more than 40 points depending on where he plays it. Um, so he's picking the highest scoring option, 42 points for this. Opens up the triple. Yeah, I mean I can see why he chooses this. Not sure if he's seen Fluty or whether he missed it. I think when you have lots of clunky letters, I think something like hefty jumps out at you quite quickly. Yeah, but Fluty does require a bit of thought and concentration to see.
And then gravely would be the response that I can immediately see there. Thomas willing gravenly into existence, but that is not a valid play in this case.
Yeah, gravely is pretty clear, I think.
What would you be considering other than gravely at this point? I think gravely is it for me, but is there anything else even comparable, you think?
Mm, I would say nothing really comparable. I mean, I guess the other thing is something like angrily, if you're afraid of putting a vowel like um, below a triple letter score. But yeah, I think you have to play the V. The V is not the great tile, so I think Bravely is right. Um, Scores 45 points, blocks that line, and yeah, I think it does everything you want it to do.
Charles has got Gurley lined up, looking at the top of Precooked. Definitely accomplishes scoring, uh, using up some of the most clunky of the letters as far as how they combine in his rack. From his point of view, it's vowel heavy, so keeping two consonants is fine. And the board isn't completely closed down yet, although it is certainly, for him, an uphill battle to get to use the board in a meaningful way just for now. Uh, Grip, that G in particular, and the R, well, it's a little more difficult to do an 8 using the R and grip and Apple. Possible, technically. There's Aged with the GED that's just been created as a lane for 7, so there's one major focal point that Thomas has to consider on his next turn, and that's to limit options for his opponent when feasible while also scoring as much as he can. Um, but with all his 1-point tiles he's got right now, that is no easy feat.
Yeah, Thomas actually has a bingo. Not the easiest to spot because it's through a second U. So some of the players on the chat have spotted it. Autotune. It's pretty easy to miss, I think. I mean,
It is in the fluty spot as well that you had mentioned earlier. So yeah, definitely missable, to quote one person in the chat. Uh, yeah, autotune's a nice spot.
all right, so he plays Noyao. Uh, Unfortunate miss, but he's still a hit. So Noyao is one of the better plays available if you don't see Autotune. Another option could have been Out Jinx, but yeah, I think Bingo is the clear best play.
So we return to Charles.
And Charles has lined up FAV on his rack. Seems like he's going to put it on top of Horde and Gurley. Oh no, he's putting it beside Resisted, which is also decent scoring spot. In fact, scoring one more point, then playing it on top. So I think, yeah, playing the F and D always a good option. Yeah. Sorry guys, we were just trying to troubleshoot some of the sound, the ambient sound, but so Thomas is 32 points ahead now. After Noyao, after Fev. Not too sure what they would do in this position actually. He should probably maybe just play. I mean, he has a high scoring play, I guess, of Tela, but the problem is that it empties the bag. Tela goes under grip to form grip and hooks Kaba as well. It's quite a nice overlap. But given that there are just four letters left in the bag, he might want to do something else instead. Um, he might think about just playing three tiles. He might also think about blocking the N or the G. Um, yeah, I think the N looks somewhat dangerous, I think, and the G itself, I hmm, I don't think. Well, I think that there might be more goes to the N, just from my very preliminary scan. Um, there's also the front hook of GED if Charles has an A. So I'm not sure. Like he might do something like TA just to block that line, the two lines, both the N and GED. But yeah, if he plays two letters, there's a chance that Charles just plays one tile and opens up the board again. So not an
Yeah,
easy position. Yeah.
very challenging position for sure. With four in the bag, I certainly would be leaning try and play three whenever possible here, just to remove any chance at my opponent being able to fish in a lot of situations. And I would agree with your assessment that I think the sevens involving hooking GED with an A and eights involving the N and Oyao, my instinct is to take out both of those spots with a three-letter play on this turn. So realistically, to me, I'm looking at some sort of three-letter word on top, um, and then at the same time something that doesn't give anything back. The hard thing here is though, like if you play aged, then you have raged as one example that your opponent can come back with. So then maybe it's not so straightforward to play something three letters on top of that, at least making aged. So is there three letters somewhere else that you can do possibly? And then that also gets complicated very quickly. So I would, yeah, totally agree with you that this is a really challenging position here as far as what to do that's effective. I don't think you can play two necessarily here, as tempting as it is. So what do you do instead, really? I mean, you could sacrifice a lot and play three to the end, but I don't think that's feasible either. There's just so many things that can happen where maybe even Charles doesn't necessarily have to um, play a bingo if you mess up the pre-endgame play here. So uh, I would be very curious to see how the option sim. I think it's worth noting just for uh, point value and placement. Vibe is a possibility with that I that Thomas has at some point. So I'd be thinking about if there was a better play keeping it. But Ita, I can see, is the three-letter play that takes out the obvious lane involving Ged, or at least, actually, no, it does take it out because there's no G left for Gapo. So I think it just really forces eights to the N. It makes it quite challenging to make eights through the G. No, again, Gapo is not a word that can be playable here. So yeah, it's basically just to the N, essentially, for No Yao.
Yeah. And well, I mean, actually possible from Thomas' point of view now is something like transute through the U of Jutes. But I think uh, Charles, well, at least, well, I'm getting confused now. At least, well, Thomas would have, just thought that if that happens, then that happens. He can't do anything about it. Um, but now there is an option of, potentially Charles fishing an O and picking an A, right? So, and having transute to play. If he spots that, then he can play something like OR, or even something like GO.
I think Geo is the one I would do for the pure chaos, because then you would have two spots that can't be obstructed both
Yeah,
at the same time. It's ballsy being able to play that and permute possibilities, because you basically have an eight tile end game to play here. If you play off the O, you figure out everything you can possibly draw, and what my opponent is going to play here based on what I draw every time. So he does have 8 minutes of time, so he could go through every one of those end games and figure out he should do accordingly.
yeah. This is one of the situations that, simulations might not tell you what's the best play because they tend to have some assumptions about what your opponent plays based on like the best equity play, and they may not block everything. But in this case, if you have a perfect opponent, um, they tend to know what you have, and I mean they will block um, your bingos. So in this case, um, you pretty much have to set up something that's unblockable. So I think something like GO or something like OR will do. Not sure if there are other suggestions in the chat. Uh, yeah, well, nothing yet. I mean,
I'm trying.
I'm running a simulation and it's saying things like playing the D off, but it's not correct in this situation. I don't think it doesn't give you two spots.
I'm trying to play through all the possible endgames manually on my side. This is the fun thing with watching is there's always things to learn. There's always things you can do and see, okay, well, I happen to have a bit more omniscience looking at the pool, but I still want to play through all the endgames just to learn here. Because part of what we see sometimes when we as players look, at, say, Quackle or Macondo or what have you, is sometimes, you can look and say, okay, it says this is correct, but why? And then often when it's earlier in the game, you can't really see all the ways a game might play out to figure out why. But in this case, when it's an 8-tile endgame where there's only 8 permutations of possible sequences, um, after this play, as far as bingos versus not, you can really figure out why um, any of the analysis engines will say a move is better than the other one. So I am looking to learn here and play through all of them, but yeah, go or in one of the two spots, certainly ballsy, but what stands out to me as far as just pure possibilities.
Yeah, just to highlight that as well, that if you do assume that the A is in the bag, um, you probably would save more spread if you play OR. Um, I mean, if you're gonna get transute and Starn or something, you're gonna, it's probably better to play OR because if you play GO, your opponent's gonna play a six-letter play or something, using the M on top of the double letter score. So that's gonna give your opponent a 40-point response, even if you have transute to win the game. So it makes sense to play OR instead. But I think he's also running through like, what happens if I pick the I, what happens if I pick the E? Do I have other possibilities? And he plays the O.
Nice play. Very nice play.
Very nice. And Thomas, yeah, yeah, I guess he can't really do very much about this position now. Um, his best play is a six tile play, but that's not going to win him the game.
No, but as a general rule, and this is again a human factor that we'll put out there for those who are looking to continue to level up their game, a good rule of thumb when there are two options, as far as bingos in this case, is you want to take away the more obvious one of the two, assuming you spot both, and force your opponent to find the nicer play. That's maybe a little bit more obscure. So, in this case, just because of the board vision element that's involved with seeing Transute or the U and Jutes, I would be taking out the 7 lane that's just been created at the top and forcing my opponent to find the harder one. It may not simulate better necessarily to take out the top spot. I think when counting in the human factor, you got to take out the 7 and then just make your opponent find that 8.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, very clearly he's setting up for his own bingo, right? When he plays OR, and if you know the rec, you know that he has starred. So definitely just block that first. Hope he didn't see transute, and just pray for the best. Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Charles has seen it, transute as well. Uh, So the best play for Thomas is Tomial, Tomial. It's a pure six, so if he doesn't see it, I think it's understandable as well. I mean, by pure six, I mean it doesn't take an S, but yeah, Tomia is good. So he's probably thinking. I mean, I think the scores would be pretty close after the bingo. So he's thinking like, do I have a big play that somehow negates his bingo score, or puts me ahead by enough? He's playing Oil Man to block. Okay, that's not
Tomiel
gonna
has a
win.
fun anagram as well.
Mhm.
It's an unusual pluralization. Maloti is the anagram, and that's a plural of loti, which is a monetary unit of Lesotho. Charles coming down with Transud immediately, so again, well done to us to figure out that sequence. We'll go to the mic and we'll listen on the insight from the twins on their matchup.
436. Yep. 4. 440 to 410. Yep. Not 4.